a series of 3. And what our team will do, they'll also drop off the supplies for the painting or craft session at the client's homes. And then they can follow along with our great team member here, Carissa, learn how to do some painting, or also, again, they can do it on demand. You'll see this balance class. This is Lori Morell, the director of our health and wellness program. So our health and wellness, and this you can see our morning show. So if you look at the left side, this is all the navigation panes. So along with the live and recorded programs, we also have a lot of resources on here, tips for caregivers, different things they need to know at different points in time. What I will say is most of our content is developed internally, right? So it's the same people that would be providing programming on when our clients are on site, they're providing the programming when they're at home. I think this is great. So there's been a learning curve. This is different skill set. This is not something our staff were doing on a regular basis before. So for us, we had to invest in some equipment, a little bit of training, because doing live programming and then recording it, there are definitely certain ways you need to do it to make it compelling. Also some training on how to upload this, because we're asking our program managers to actually manage the content management system here. We think keeping it close to the program keeps the content timely and relevant. They know what their clients are looking for. So our staff has really taken on a lot of new tasks that they hadn't done before. What I will say is that's going to be interesting, because right now our clients aren't on site, but when they come back, when our doors are open again, we now have to pivot back to live and recorded and on-site programming. So we're thinking about that already, of how we're going to support that, because we think this programming will remain relevant. This was in direct response to the pandemic, but we understand the value of it and understood that before. I think what this did was just accelerate our work, because we often heard that our clients in our adult day program needed support when they were home in the evenings and over the weekends. And this is a way to do that when staff aren't always available 24 hours a day. So we can support them with programming and activity. We also think it can expand our capacity. If our clients can come back on site and maybe we can only bring 50% of them back, maybe we do a 50-50 virtual experience, very much like the schools are doing, right? So we want to keep people connected. And also we are limited to what our capacity is here in a normal world. So this also opens up opportunities to expand our adult daycare program, but also there are people that maybe just for geography or other reasons don't want to come on site. And now we have a way to deliver some really strong and robust programming to them. What is really interesting, excuse me, to us is we know we can't build all the content ourselves, and there are some really great content providers out there. So we were looking for some external partners or content providers that could support and supplement what we're already doing. So if you look here, there is a group called One Day University. This is an educational offering we have a subscription to. We get 5 lectures a month. They are live, so our participants can go onto the calendar, participate in a live program. It's arts, history, culture. It is lectures, professors from over 150, I think, universities internationally. And then this is also then all on demand. So what we found is this is really great for our clients, but the caregivers are loving this as well. So that's some additional support for our caregivers. The next integration we're looking at, and we're hoping this happens within the next week or two, we're doing some final legal review on this, is a really robust health and wellness product called Spiro 100. So this is a program out of California. It's health and wellness specific to seniors. I believe they have about 100+ classes on demand right now. And you can self-manage your classes and choose classes by level, type of class, pace, instructor. And what's pretty cool about this as well is there's some artificial intelligence built into it, where based on what you're doing and some simple questions you answer, they will make recommendations about what classes you might want to look at. So we are looking at other external content providers in the arts area and also in spiritual programming. And we think that is a really great opportunity for us to continue to supplement our content. The last thing I'll say is, as we build out this platform, it makes us think of, we now have our adult day center has a platform. We are moving out to our health and wellness program next week with an additional, I believe, 80 clients. And then we'll be moving out to our rehab program. We are really looking to make this an integrated, seamless platform. So we're calling it basically building your day. If I want to come onto Parker and at 10 a.m. I want to do a music program, and at 12 o'clock I have a rehab appointment scheduled with my therapist, and at 3 o'clock I want to do a health and wellness class, then I can do all that through this one easy access site. There's lots of opportunities ahead of us, lots of things for us to think about, but this was our initial response to an immediate need, and now we're thinking about how we really build this out across our organization to serve not just our residents and our existing clients, but other people in the community that we can offer the same kind of support to. So that was a very quick look at what we've done, and with that, I am going to turn it over to Kari Olson from Front Porch and let her talk about the great work they're doing. Thanks, Kari.
Thanks, Judy. Hello, everyone. It's morning in California where I am, but I think where you all, it's the afternoon. So good afternoon. It's a delight to be with you today. Can we advance the slides? Do I need to advance them, or will you guys be advancing them?
I will do that. There you go.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So who am I? Where did I come from? I'm Kari Olson. I'm the Chief Innovation and Technology Officer for a not-for-profit senior living provider based on the West Coast called Front Porch. Today we touch about 5,000 lives through a full continuum of care, market rate retirement, affordable housing, community-based services, and have about 2,200 employees. One of the hats I wear is that I'm also the founder and the president of the Front Porch Center for Innovation and Wellbeing. I've been working in senior living for 25 years at this point, and I really had for a long time the focus of a chief technology officer, which is really using technology to help the business run. But about 10 years ago, it became really clear to me that there was an opportunity to see how technology could be used to help people live well. And I call this I really felt this needed its own focus, something different than traditional IT. So we launched the Front Porch Center for Innovation and Wellbeing, and our reason for being is to explore innovative uses of technology to empower individuals to thrive, particularly as we age. And in our work over the last 10 years, we've worked with a full range of technology solutions, off-the-shelf things like iPod music players to really cutting-edge stuff like AI and robotics and a lot of things in between. We freely share the majority of the work we're doing on our website. A picture of it's on the left there. We post impact stories, and within an impact story, you can find our white papers on the pilots we do, the results we get, the data we collect, our learnings about best practices in terms of how to adopt and scale promising solutions. So I encourage you to go there and look. And also on the right here, you have pictures. We produce a number of reports about this work and also tools that are freely available. So one of the things that we've done is in this time when we have a lot of our older adults adopting technology, it's really important to keep them safe online. And so we've created a cybersecurity toolkit, which has two parts. It has slides that any organization could pick up and use and do a cybersecurity presentation pretty easily. And it has a resource guide, a picture of what you're seeing here. So tools like that are available. They're free, and often they're translated into multiple languages. And I strongly encourage you to go and pick up any tools that might be helpful to you. Another thing that you'll find there is a staying home, staying connected guide that we created in a response to the pandemic. It includes just a massive listing of resources for how you can use technology to help people live well during the pandemic. So that kind of gives you a sense of the gamut of what the Front Porch Center for Innovation and Wellbeing has been doing. Today, I'm going to focus very specifically on a segment of our work in affordable housing. So if we could go to the next slide. Okay. So the first project that I want to share with you is called Lighthouse for Older Adults. And this project is actually initiated by UC Berkeley. Front Porch is one of a number of organizations that are participating in the project. The kind of the tagline is what you see there on the left, but the real focus of this work is the 3 bullet points on the right. So first is to install broadband-enabled Wi-Fi in affordable housing, and to really do an exploration of the current technologies that are available and to find multiple options that could be shared as a best practice for achieving affordable broadband installation. This is a really important issue. Broadband, the cost of broadband, and in some cases, the technological savvy that's required to get broadband installed in buildings is an obstacle, and it's preventing a lot of organizations from deploying it. And so kind of collecting some of the best practices and the best information we can that will help organizations jump through this really important hurdle to get going is one of the first goals of the project. The second goal is to identify affordable devices that are effective and specifically proven to be very useful to older adults and easily adopting technology and really participating actively in the digital world. The third part is to develop training and support that can be easily delivered to really, again, enable older adults to actively participate in the digital world. And then the fourth thing, I call this the 3-legged stool. So I just gave you 3 legs, right? I gave you the broadband, I gave you the devices, and I talked about training and support. But what we're rapidly learning is this seat is missing from the stool. And the seat is in language content and apps. So in affordable housing, there's a very wonderfully beautiful, diverse population of older adults. Many are monolingual speaking older adults. And so there's, even if you put this infrastructure in and you have this approach to how to train and help people adopt, you also really need to identify content, both in apps and the actual digital content that can be accessed in language for older adults. So these 4 challenges are quite honestly some of the toughest challenges there are today. And they're ones I get super excited about. I know Judy and Ryan are laughing because, like, if we solve these challenges, we will be obliterating the digital divide, which is really what we need to do. I don't want to bridge it. I'm now openly saying that's not enough. We need to obliterate it. And it's really, these issues are really about quickly becoming social justice issues, and nothing illustrated that more than the pandemic and the need to, help an older adult even get a vaccine. You have to be able to go online and register for the vaccine. So, the digital world is becoming a place where, for a variety of reasons, a lot of the transactions of life take place, and we all know that this is an important area of work to do. So this is one project that's been convened during the pandemic. I'm so excited to say that it's not the only one. There's a number of them. Ryan's going to talk about some, and there are others beyond what we'll bring up today. There may be some in your backyard. This is critically important work. And one of the most important things that we all can do is share what we're learning with each other. There's a number of consortiums kind of building across the country to share these best practices and to really advocate for more funding and more access. One of the things we hope to contribute through the Lighthouse for Older Adults is actually the data and analysis and research capabilities that UC Berkeley brings to the party. We're hoping that their researchers and their research teams can really help us quantify and validate the outcomes of these interventions in such a way that we can go to other funding sources like health plans, like the government and others, and say, look, here's some more data on how powerful these interventions are and how important they are. So next slide. So again, just to kind of, this is like the laundry list. Forgive me, 1 second. this is a laundry list of major goals that we have, and there's a ton underneath it. And I've covered most of them, but one of the other three remaining that I didn't talk about that are pretty important are to support consumer telehealth adoption. I'm using these words very intentionally. A lot of times when we think of telehealth, it's actually what I would call organizational telehealth, where a healthcare funder decides on a telehealth platform, and they use that to engage patients, particularly older adults, in telehealth. One of the challenges in this day and age is, and I'm sure you're facing this in New Jersey, is most older adults populations, when you sit down and talk with them, they're relating to multiple healthcare systems, and therefore there's multiple tools that they may need to have a telehealth session with their provider. And so part of what we've done in this particular project is we've decided to embrace that fact, rather than trying to drive everyone to one common platform, which is really impossible to do right now. We're actually just trying to make sure that we take the time to understand what the telehealth opportunities are for a particular older adults, payers, and plans, and connect them to that using the tools that are available. The other thing we're doing is we're working very hard to identify innovative funding streams. So we're tapping a really interesting group called Build Healthy Places Network that's looking not just at HUD or foundation support, but also looking at other types of social accountability funding streams and other resources and exploring new channels so that we can identify where we get the funds to do this work more broadly and nationally. Obviously, policy has to be a huge part of this work. We have to be able to tell the story to our policymakers at the local, state, and federal level, and really help focus funding for this work in their priorities. And then ultimately, we want to raise all boats together. So working across the country to make sure that as we find things that work, as many people as want that information can have it and can use it to adopt for their organization. Next slide. Oops, back one, please. So a second project that I wanted to share with you, yes, I am familiar with the Ziegler Linkage Fund. Front Porch is a member of that fund, and the Q&A, I'd be happy to talk about it more. For a second project, kind of taking a different approach, but also in affordable housing, Front Porch has been working for over 5 years now to bring mental health services into affordable housing. There's a critical need for that for older adults generally, particularly in affordable housing, and then particularly in a pandemic. So the premise here was, how could we use broadband-enabled solutions to connect older adults to in-language telemental health services? We've been doing this work for quite some time. We've developed a significant number of outcomes that have been validated by USC as a research partner. And our goal now is to scale this up and to bring it to more people. The approach is very simple. We just use iPads that are enabled with a HIPAA compliant Zoom. And we work with mental health providers, some of which are not even technology enabled, to help them technology enable and use these sessions to connect with older adults and provide behavioral health services. A big part of this work has actually been learning about how to openly talk about mental health and behavioral health issues in culturally appropriate ways, and to really help kind of the older adults feel comfortable with adopting this approach. One of the things we quickly learned was that tele might actually just be telephone. And one of the things we had to pivot, we were all ready to go with our iPads and loaner iPads that we're giving out to people to borrow for the mental health session, that really the entry point was the telephone. And so a lot of the older adults started in their behavioral health sessions over the phone, and then once they got comfortable with the medium and the connection and the services, then transitioned over very easily into the video sessions. And really there was almost a native desire there, because now they wanted to see the person they were talking to, and it made that last bit, that last mile of adoption much easier. So based on this work, we're really excited. We were just funded in partnership with the AARP Foundation to expand this project to 3 additional communities. And the most important part of this work is we'll be building a toolkit that we can share all of our learnings and best practices over the last 5 years with any provider that wants to stand up a telewellness program in their community. So there's a lot of dynamic aspects to this work, including not just the sessions themselves, but a whole mental health program and content for how to self-activate and take care of your own wellness, and many recommendations on how to engage local providers and partners and how to do this work together. Because this is really, all of this work you're going to hear, at least when I talk, it's not something any of us can do by ourselves. No matter how well resourced we are, all of this work happens best when we collaborate with each other and share what we're learning, and that empowers us to get there much faster. So next slide. So these are 2 examples of the work that the Front Porch Center for Innovation and Wellbeing is doing. And when I aggregate from these and also across our other work, there's some key lessons learned that I think everyone that is contemplating doing more work in this space should really take to heart. Learn from my pain points. So first of all, when you get excited about technology enabling individuals' well-being, you have to put the older adult first, right? They really need to champion this. They need to think it's a good idea. They need to really help you co-create and co-design the intervention and what people are going to do. And then also staff are really key. So in all of the projects that we do, we work really hard to have staff champions and resident champions first identified, and really allow them to get their hands on the project and really say what it means to them and what the needs are, and to make sure that we're doing the right things. And then we build the project from there. So a key part of that is having trust and just a tremendous amount of positive, robust communication with these champions and the participants to really make sure that you fully understand the need. I think about when I started this work many years ago, the best advice I ever got was, don't get excited about the shiny object. So if you've heard about telehealth and you're excited about telehealth, that's actually the wrong place to start. You need to start with the need, make sure that you clearly understand the need, and then you can really start applying all these wonderful tools to meet the need. And whenever we've done that and done it well, we've had significant success. Whenever we miss the conversation about need and we just get excited about the shiny object, we tend to be a little bit off the mark. So key learning for us, I think it's really important to keep that in mind. As I mentioned at the top, from the work we're doing, we work with a very diverse population of older adults right now. And so I'm really become this crazy advocate for how important multilingual capabilities and content are. They're absolutely essential in this world. Every community demographic is changing and becoming more diverse. And this is a reality that as we all work in this, we need to advocate for this, and we need to be developing solutions that address this so that we're inclusive. And as part of that, it's not enough just to be multilingual capable. You have to really be culturally aware and in your adoption and your support approaches. And there's, you know, when we go into one community that may be predominantly Korean, the adoption and support approach we might take there is very different than another community that we might approach that's maybe predominantly Iranian. So these are really important issues to build into your adoption approach, and they're very doable. It's just about being mindful and aware of what the needs are and how to approach people in appropriate ways. Collaboration, I already talked about, increases impact and sustainability. I can't echo that enough. And then I think one of the keys to our success that we've learned is our ability to tell the story to the residents and staff, to get them excited, to tell the story in our organization, to help scale promising ideas across the organization, to tell stories in situations like we have today with our peers. That actually creates powerful momentum that creates more collaboration and kind of fuels the work even further. And so when you look at our site, our website, you'll see all the storytelling that we've been doing. And one of the most impactful things we found is not to tell the story as us, but to tell the story in terms of the people who are being impacted by the solutions and the data that they've provided about their experience. And then the last thing I would share is this work is not for the meek. You really do need to take time, have great patience, and put together a process of continuing listening in order to build adoption. One of the things that the Front Porch team really has focused on over the last 10 years is how to build sustained adoption, so that you don't just invest in a solution and have it become a really expensive doorstop, but have it robustly used. And this really does take time and listening and kind of pivoting again and again and again until you really dial it in to where the solution so fulfills individuals' meaning and purpose and their way of being and their definition of health that it takes on a life of its own, and you no longer have to push it, people pull it from you. So these are some of the best practices, but I'm going to stop here and turn over to Ryan because he has amazing things to say. And most importantly, because we've left a lot of time at the end, because we really want to just talk with you and hear what's on your mind. So Ryan?
Thank you, Kari. Hi, everyone. I am Ryan Elza, and I'm the Vice President for Innovation and Technology at Volunteers of America National Services. So a little bit about Volunteers of America National Services. We are a part of the Volunteers of America family. So Volunteers of America is one of the largest providers of affordable housing in the country and community-based services. So overall, Volunteers of America touches about 1.5 million people across 400 communities in 46 states. Volunteers of America National Services has about 230 properties across 40 states, and we also operate a number of different healthcare settings, from CCRCs, assisted living, skilled nursing facilities, to 3 PACE sites. And so it's a very large and diverse organization in terms of programs and services. And so my roles and responsibilities are really to look across the people that we serve and residents and understand how we can leverage technology in order to improve outcomes through a person-centered approach. And I'll just kind of echo a couple things that Kari mentioned in her presentation before I kind of dive in and tell you a little bit about what we're doing. But I really want to stress the importance of collaboration and really going along this journey together with your peers as you're looking at adopting technology, because it is so, you'll get to your end result so much faster if you're open to those conversations, if you're building those relationships. I actually met Kari and Front Porch, about 5 years ago now, it must be, through a program that I'll talk a little bit later in the presentation called Connected Communities that was developed out of AARP Foundation. So I'm actually here wearing 2 hats as I talk about the work that we're doing at Volunteers of America National Services. I am talking from my official capacity as a VP of Innovation and Technology, but I'm also talking from the point of view and perspective of AARP Foundation, the Connected Communities program that I developed there during my tenure at AARP Foundation. So I'm most recently coming from AARP Foundation, where I led their social isolation and innovation work and developed a number of programs and services that really looked at building digital equity and digital inclusion as a means to social connection. And in those early days, I really started to look at voice-first technology as one of those emerging technologies that showed a lot of promise. And coincidentally, at the same time, Front Porch was working at piloting Amazon Alexa within their communities. And I had seen a link or a article that was written by the Stanford Social Innovation Review about the project. And I saw that the author was Davis Park from Front Porch. And I connected on LinkedIn, reached out, sent a message to learn more about what they're doing and share about what we were doing at AARP Foundation at that time. And from there, built out a wonderful collaboration and partnership all these years later. And, I'm really so appreciative to Kari and Front Porch and Parker Life, who have been such incredible partners throughout all the work that I've been doing in the past number of years to really look at how technology can build digital equity and social connection for older adults, and really making sure that as you're thinking about leveraging technology, that we're being advocates to make sure that vulnerable communities have access to technology. So I'm going to jump in to talk a little bit about what we're doing at Volunteers of America National Services. So one of the programs and projects that we are launching this year is called Aging with Options. And Aging with Options is a comprehensive model for looking at how you serve residents in affordable housing holistically through a person-centered approach. And it combines a couple of different key stakeholders in order to better serve residents within our communities. So first, we leverage service coordinators that operate within our properties and who help connect residents with social programs and services as a part of their normal work, and are incorporating them into a new dimension of how we're thinking about our residents in addition to catering to just the social determinants of health, really having them play a critical role in their overall health and well-being, and partnering them with a wellness nurse within the community. So we are deploying in a number of these demonstration projects, a wellness nurse who will actually help to connect residents with health information and resources through person-centered assessments, really help the individual build out a healthy aging plan that is holistic from both a resident perspective, but also looking at the property and building out a healthy aging plan for that community and understanding what are the critical needs, doing a needs assessment for that community, understanding where the gaps are, and identifying those opportunities for collaboration and partnership in order to bridge some of those gaps and better connect resident with services in order to improve their overall health and social connection. And then also as a part of the model, we're embedding community health workers because, as Kari mentioned, in order to really have a successful program and integrate technology within a community, you really need to have culturally competent resources, materials, outreach, and engagement. And you also need to have that adoption. And we believe that a community health worker and that role is so critical in order to seeing a model like Aging with Options be successful within our properties. And then the last component of the model is integrating technology. And so for the particular project that I'm talking about today, for this demonstration of Aging with Options, we are leveraging voice first technology and the Connected Communities program from AARP Foundation in the deployment of this new model that we are testing. And so as a part of the program, residents will be receiving voice first devices and will be upgrading the broadband infrastructure within the property so that they are able to leverage internet enabled devices. And I'll talk a little bit more about Connected Communities and that overall programmatic model and approach in a couple minutes. But the reason we are really taking this holistic and comprehensive approach to addressing both the social and health needs of our residents is we know that in order to have a sustainable program and integration of different services, support services into the housing, different housing settings, you really need to be building out a business case that attracts different funding streams. So historically within our community, service coordination has been primarily funded by HUD. and there really is no mechanism to get those types of services for residents in non-HUD funded programs because the operating budgets of these properties are so very tight. And so we are trying to really understand how can we create a programmatic model that improves health outcomes and reduce utilization of care that we can then go and approach health plans, managed care organizations, and even federal funders in the future to bring these types of supportive services and programs into more communities that don't have the existing funding streams to be able to do that. And so we're really following a chronic disease management approach as a part of this programmatic model, and really trying to understand how we can get primary care specialists and behavioral health services to residents in a structured approach, and health education as we really seek to improve the overall well-being and connection within our properties. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk a little bit about AARP Foundation's Connect to Affect Connected Communities. So this is a program that developed, as I mentioned, 4 to 5 years ago out of AARP Foundation that leverages smart speakers and voice-first technology to combat social isolation within affordable housing. So the original program, pilot of the program, we deployed 200 Amazon Echo devices across 5 senior housing communities in Baltimore and DC, and really took that approach of understanding what was the potential of the technology, understand and test a couple hypotheses. Would residents even use smart speakers? How were they using those devices? And what were the opportunities to leverage voice-first technology and the different capabilities in order to improve social connectedness of those individuals? And from that pilot process, we developed a full programmatic model that really looks holistically at implementing technology into affordable housing communities, all the way from how do you look at upgrading your broadband infrastructure upgrade, to how do you install devices into individual residents' homes, to how do you train and empower residents to use that technology in meaningful ways. And then we also built our own voice-first solutions for specifically affordable housing communities. And so we built 2 voice-first applications. The first called Community Hub, that turns Amazon Alexa into a concierge for senior living. So residents are able to access calendar events, activities, information through their smart speaker, and staff within those communities, whether it's service coordinators or property managers, are able to interact and engage with residents, send out messages, and really encourage them to participate as a part of their normal course of work. And so that program has since scaled to 128 properties across the country in a couple of different models. So originally the model was to primarily focus on the distribution of Amazon Echo smart speakers and Google Home smart speakers, but the program has since evolved to include tablets with Google Assistant built into it, smartphones, and other types of technology. But really at the core of what the programmatic model is that train the trainer model of distributing and integrating technology within communities. Next slide. So really the goal of that work and the work that we're doing and the work that Kari mentioned earlier is creating an out-of-the-box experience for both staff and residents. So in order to have adoption of technology, you really have to think about how you can make it as easy as possible for older adults and staff to be able to implement and operate programs that leverage technology. I think, we've all had examples in which new technology has come to us either in our personal lives or as a part of our work. And the moment that we encounter frustration early into that experience, we kind of gave up on it and dismissed that technology, and really didn't provide the opportunity to come back and understand how that technology might be beneficial to us in our lives. And this is even more true for older adults when we think about technology adoption. If your experience isn't if there's frustration at the outset, it's really difficult to go back and change the mindset of individuals. And so we really look to create an easy to use solution for both residents and staff. And so the way that we do it is through remote training for staff and volunteers. We create facilitator guides. We create remote workshops and presentations and recorded trainings. We've developed explainer videos that can be provided to both staff and residents, handouts that can be given, and quick start guides and sheets so that individuals are able to have those as resources as they're using the technology, to both help them troubleshoot issues, but also to learn about what some of the capabilities are. And then, as Kari mentioned, it's really important when we talk about telehealth to be clear about what we're talking about. And for this, we developed a consumer education on telehealth for specifically low-income older adults to help them be more health literate when it comes to telehealth, how they can access it, what questions should they be asking their providers or their health plans, and what are the different ways that you can do it in order to maintain your well-being and access healthcare. And it has been a really powerful experience over the past 4 or 5 years to see the evolution of how you build out content in order to increase the likelihood of adoption. And this is something that was echoed by Kari earlier. Next slide. So I just outlined here just the general approach that we take, and some ideas for you all as you're considering to go down your journeys into leveraging technology. It's kind of a 3-step process in order to really think about integrating technology. So first, as Kari underlined, you really want to first understand what the needs are within your communities. And so doing that person-centered holistic assessment of individuals and communities to understand what the needs are that you're addressing through technology or education or other types of programming or softwares. Identifying the barriers that might exist from impacting individuals in their ability to access technology. So understanding whether it's home safety to internet access to affordability, what those are, and how in your design and approach can think about overcoming those barriers and being really intentional about that. And then also as a part of that, as you're going through that journey, really raising awareness about the importance and opportunity for health and well-being and social connection as a part of that. So it's one thing to kind of pull individuals together and do a needs assessment and really talk to them about what they're trying to accomplish and what opportunities there are. But that there's also an opportunity in that experience to provide education about some of the topics that you're hoping to create interventions around, and use that needs assessment and that opportunity to provide the first level of education that will lay the groundwork for future program rollout and adoption. Then when it comes to connecting to broadband technology and training, there are low-cost internet and technology access programs that exist, and we'll talk a little bit about those when we talk about resources at the very end. But there are search tools that are available from Everyone On and now AARP and OATS that allow you to see what type of low-cost programs may be available to access both broadband and hardware for individuals based on eligibility criteria. What we've done, and we've helped other organizations look at is how you can leverage reserve funds for affordable housing properties to complete infrastructure upgrades. So due to COVID-19, HUD and the other agencies have become much more flexible about how dollars can be spent, since right now digital isolation equals social isolation. And so we've been successful at leveraging those funds to actually put broadband into our communities. And then really look at, outside of that, how you can build partnerships with funders around shared goals or outcomes. So whether that's a local nonprofit, a foundation, a health plan, a hospital, a health system, really look at that ecosystem that surrounds you and understand where some of that shared value may be and how technology could play a role in creating that shared value to increase your funding mix. And then, what other opportunities are there for synchronous and asynchronous online classes and education? So maybe if your organization doesn't have the capacity to implement training and digital literacy for individuals, what are some of those other partnerships or organizations that do offer those trainings that you can integrate into the work that you're doing? So OATS, Older Adult Technology Services for Older Adults, is one really great example of an organization that offers a lot of online classes for older adults around technology. And then virtual programming and education. So once you have the key components in place, how can you begin to think about adapting programmatic model and virtual programmatic models to virtual engagements? So Judy did a really great and excellent job talking about the work that Parker Life has done to transition a lot of their in-person engagements to virtual. And they built a technology platform and portal to be able to do that, which is incredible. And I'm really impressed by all of that, all the work and thought and design that went into that. But even if your organization doesn't have the funding or capabilities to build your own portal and create your own content, really think about how you can use free video conferencing solutions to create some virtual experiences. So whether that's Google Meets or free versions of Zoom, how can you begin to transition and make accessible that online content for the people that you're serving? And then, what are those other online opportunities for connection and continued learning? So senior centers are have already transitioned a lot of their content virtually. And there's also virtual senior centers that exist that are solely virtual. Libraries, museums, and other institutions have also provided a lot of great online content that exists and is available for individuals. So how can you be thinking about leveraging that content and integrating it into the work that you're doing? Next slide. Actually, I think that's it. So with that, we really look forward to your questions and discussion about all of these things that we talked about today.
Ryan and Kari, that was incredible. So much information. And I saw the questions. Melissa, I think you guys are, maybe you can manage the questions.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention two things. One, I saw a couple of questions in there about the Connect to Effect and the work in affordable housing. And I would just say, if you have questions specific to that, send them my way. Parker is really excited to be a funder of that program. We have been for a few years, and there's over 50 affordable housing buildings in New Jersey that have the Connect to Effect program in place, and we're certainly looking to expand that. And that's all with Ryan had kind of partnered with us on that incredible work. The second thing I will just echo, it's not about our small virtual platform, but we see every time we talk to somebody, everybody is trying to build similar things, to Ryan's point. And it, it's, I don't want to say it, but we let go of ownership. We just want to be able to deliver the information out to seniors. So we are looking to talk to, I think everybody, just as you say, within New Jersey, there's work to be done everywhere, but to talk more about how we can share those resources, how we can get that information out, how we can build products and programs with one another rather than doing it in silos. But anyway, just wanted to add those two quick comments, Melissa.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, Judy. And I think that's a really great point that, there are resources out there, and you should connect with each other and ask questions of people who are doing this work as well, so that you can get information about how to do it yourself. So we have quite a few questions that have come in, but I'm going to start with sort of the obvious and obligatory question that's always asked. Kari and Ryan, are you both willing to share these slides if we could send them out to the audience after the fact? Thank you. I appreciate that. That was one of the questions that came in. And Kari, I'll start with you because this was the first thing that came in and you did acknowledge it during your presentation, but our good friend Susan Hoskins from the Friends Foundation for Aging has asked in particular about the Ziegler Link Age Fund, and you mentioned that you are aware of it and have partnered with that or work with them. So if you could just maybe elaborate on that just a little bit for the rest of the audience who might not be familiar with them.
Yeah, so Ziegler is an investment leader in focusing on senior living, not just senior living, but that's a major focus area for them. Linkage is kind of an organization that has played a lot of leadership roles across senior living in convening people to solve tough problems. They got together and believed that we should build an investment fund to raise funds to invest in early stage companies that are bringing solutions into senior living, particularly technology solutions. So they've raised two funds at this point. The first fund closed in terms of investment a couple of years ago. Second fund closed, I think maybe 2 years ago, and they've been investing those funds in startup companies, some of which have come to fruition, some of which are still evolving. But I think what's been really valuable about being part of that is, and Front Porch is invested in those funds, is the access to the kind of the entrepreneurial community. They do a great job of putting together webinars to give the organizations that are invested in the funds early access to what the startups are doing, where they're headed, what the opportunities are, and to create opportunities to pilot. So they're definitely worth following in terms of what they're looking at and what they're bringing in across the ecosystem, as Ryan described. But they're one of many that are doing it now. They're not alone anymore. Right. This has really been identified as a huge opportunity space, and there's a number of groups that are standing up investment funds. Mm-hmm. So hopefully that answered your question.
I think that's great just to provide folks with more information, because I don't know how many people were familiar with it. So I thank Susan for asking it and you for addressing it. And so we did have a question in the Q&A box that I think, Kari, was related to your presentation and how you touched on telehealth. So this person asked, and you might have an answer, but Ryan, you might also have a response as well. In telewellness programming, how challenging is it to ensure that there is an appropriately private space in the home of the older adult to participate without being overheard by another family member? Or what are some other ways that privacy in their own home was addressed?
So we have been conducting the telewellness program in affordable housing, and sadly, in affordable housing, most older adults are living alone. So that's not a challenge that's been difficult to overcome. But in cases where there's a spouse or a partner living in the home, we've also made sure that we enabled one private space in the common areas of the communities that someone could go to. That's not always possible, depends on how space is laid out in a building, but so far we've been pretty successful in creating both. So what residents can do is they can come to the office, they can check out an iPad, they can take it to their home or to this private space, do their session, and then come back and turn the equipment in.
Mm-hmm. Great. I hope that that's helpful to the asker of that question as well as to the rest of our audience. Thank you for addressing that. And Ryan, this question was posed to you, but likewise, you both might have responses on this, and it is something that I think occasionally comes up. How do these programs deal with individuals who might have hearing impairments or other barriers to participating in a virtual session?
Yeah, no, that's a really great question, and it's definitely something that you have to be thoughtful of as you're kind of deploying technology or solutions. And so I'll actually let Kari handle this question, because she and the Front Porch team at the Center for Innovation and Wellbeing have done a lot of great work around this in helping to make sure that hearables are available to individuals as they're rolling out technology solutions, and have a really great case study around it. And there are technology solutions that work really well with other technology solutions to make sure that it's an inclusive program for all.
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, this is where you see my passion kick in, right? Because if we want to do this cool stuff, most older adults after a certain age have some level of hearing challenge. That's very well known and really well documented fact. So part of the work we've been doing is a program called Hearables for All. And we've been looking at all the many different modalities we can bring forward to help make sure that everybody can participate in the digital experience. So this ranges the gamut, in all honesty, from making sure you have screen-based devices, right? So when you look at the voice-first world, I think increasingly a lot of us are trying to move towards voice-first enabled screen-based devices, where you can actually have content and have text as well as the audible. We've also been working with group listening systems, which are I call it situational hearing support. So it's not to replace a hearing aid or any other type of hearing support, but if in a noisy activity hall or dining room, or where there's a group of people, and in that circumstance, it becomes more difficult to hear, there's a solution called Eversound, which you can, there are headphones that you can put on, individuals that want additional hearing support, and then mic that can kind of pick up what's going on in the room and augment and allow for more clear sound to come through to the older adult. There's also this emerging, very exciting category of device. People have mixed reactions to it, called PSAPs, or personal sound amplification devices, and they're intended to, again, augment by combining the hearing amplifier in your ear with a cell phone that can augment sound, so that can allow you to participate in a phone conversation or to hear what's going on. These are all the types of tools that we've been having a lot of luck with. We've also been looking at vision support technologies. There's some amazing things going on with augmented reality that have allowed people to kind of re-engage visually in ways they haven't been before. So there's a lot of exciting things going on in this space. And again, these are reports that we've documented everything we're learning. Please feel free to go out to our website and raid all the information on hearables.
Hey,
I would also,
I'm sorry, Ryan, go ahead.
oh yeah, I would also mention another resource is to connect with your local state AT assistive technology program, because often they'll have libraries of these types of technologies that an individual can go in, try out. Sometimes they'll offer loan services, so you can actually take that technology home with you, try it out to see if it actually helps and meets your needs, and often offer financing as well in order to afford the technology from that individual perspective. So that's just kind of another opportunity to try out some of these items.
Yeah, that's great. And Judy, I think you were also going to jump in with a response to that one.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention about Eversound. So when we talk about the pandemic accelerated work, right? So we had looked at Eversound, but because we ended up purchasing it for a lot of reasons, but the two specific reasons were when we were quite a while ago to do some socially distanced visits. That Eversound technology allowed the family member and that resident to have those very socially distanced visits, but with much more robust listening system. So I think absolutely helped those family visits early on. And then we also, when we were able to do things like when you talk about virtual training, but you're doing it again socially distanced and people are in the doorways, we used Eversound that allowed us to do some particular training or support in a way that we couldn't have otherwise. So just an application during the pandemic.
Yeah.
I'm going to add on to that one more time. I'm super happy that Judy brought that up, because one of the most significant learnings we have on how to encourage telehealth adoption is to put headphones on the telehealth system, so that it makes the sound more clear and allows the older adult to really engage more successfully in understanding what's being discussed, and it's been a powerful game changer. So we're adding, really nice, high quality headphones to every one of our telehealth cards, because it really impacted and improved the experience for the older adults.
That's great. Thank you so much for providing that additional information. And this question is in particular about the implementation of these programs in affordable housing. And this person wanted to know specifically if these programs could be implemented in smaller affordable housing units, something that was maybe 50 to 100 residents, or is it better suited for large communities where the cost can be spread out more widely? Who wants to jump on that one?
Ryan.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in there. So absolutely, I think they were originally designed with smaller communities in mind, in that 50 to 100 person range, but also are appropriate for larger settings as well. I think, as you're really trying to consider what's the right solution, budget is a really important consideration. And so as you're trying to identify what funds are available to implement it, identifying the types of programs and solutions and technologies that can work within those, because, smart speakers are actually a really cheap device that you can deploy within communities. So you can get an Amazon Echo Dot or Google Mini, in the $20 price point, which makes it really affordable. Some of the screen devices that Kari mentioned earlier, are much more expensive, in the couple $100 range. So it's really just trying to understand, what is possible within your budget, and, working with that.
That's great. And, I think all three of you have already sort of addressed this to some degree, but how has the COVID-19 pandemic in particular impacted your both your vision for these programs as well as the implementation of these types of programs?
I'll start off, because I think it's impacted probably all of our visions in the same way, in that it has only accelerated the importance of this work. I think, for a number of years, we have been advocates in promoting the use and adoption of technology for older adults to improve their lives and well-being. But the pandemic has really shined a light on the importance of digital access and digital equity. It is no longer a nice to have. It is an absolute necessity in order for any individual to participate in today's digital economy, to participate in their healthcare, and it can no longer we can no longer kick the can down the road. The time is here and the time is now. So we really need to be looking at how we can deploy technology in the fastest way possible. So it's only increased the urgency of the work that we're doing. And as a part of that, really working more closely together with partners across the country. Because I think since the need is so great and the problem is so big to solve, that stakeholders that were maybe a little bit more reticent to come to the table before are, standing up and actively taking part. Yeah, Kari?
What he said.
Yeah, but it's true though. I do feel like, that this has sort of pushed us into the future, right? The things that, I think when Judy talked about the portal that Parker has developed, she did indicate that this was something they were working on, but had to change the way that they were going to implement it and why they were going to implement it because of the pandemic. So I think what Ryan has said is what we would all say, right? It's definitely impacted both our vision for serving older adults as well as the way we implement programs now.
Yeah, I would just add though, this is no new thought, but it's certainly, so we'll talk specifically to the Connect to Effect, deployment was different, right? Deployment was different for everybody this last year, right? So, but it's not like 2021 came around and like, oh, everything's back to normal, right? And that normal is even further out. So now we're just thinking about what deployment plans look like for seniors who don't have familiarity with technology. So now you're trying to train them virtually to use technology. And it's just a lot of things to think through. Some of them are very simplistic, but they all go back to what Kari and Ryan are saying is meet the need where it lives, what's the right relationship, who's the influencer. I think that's a big thing. We talk about influencers with technology who can get that peer-to-peer support. So I think that as close to a plug and play model that you can get, particularly as we're trying to deliver to people in the community, is what we're trying to figure out.
Right. Yeah.
The one other thing that I would add that I see dawning on more and more people is it's not going to be acceptable once the pandemic is over to go back to the way we were.
Yep.
Things fundamentally changed in the last year, and the expectation and the use of digital devices with older adults is here to stay in a new way. And it's our job not just to be thinking about how we survive the pandemic, but how we sustain this going forward. I had a meeting with a team of staff members last week that said, gosh, Kari, I've spent most of the pandemic not doing programming like I normally do, like exercise programming, and I'm actually just supporting people adopting digital tools right now. And I can tell that's never going to change. So we need to be thinking about how are we going to handle this going forward? And they're right.
Yeah.
Sorry, can I jump on that, Melissa? I want to say really quickly, I'm sure everybody, well, it's a story across the nation, but in New Jersey, it was online in Westfield about how high school students have reached out and they are now managing vaccinations for seniors, right? They saw the need. It's all about whether you have the literacy skills, you have a computer, or you just don't want to sit in front of a computer screen for 3 hours. So how you can harness, to use that word, that activity and that activism that nobody suggested it, and those high school students just stepped in and said, we're going to do this, we see a need. And like how we can capture that for additional training, additional deployment. I saw that and got very excited by that.
Yeah, no, those are always, great ways that we can all pitch in and help each other, right? And so the next question kind of piggybacks on that a little bit, in that this person wanted to know if there are currently any tools to help people in rural areas who maybe do not have broadband access due to infrastructure. And I know you did talk about broadband a little bit. I think both Kari and Ryan did, but and this comes up quite often. People are shocked to learn that there are rural parts of New Jersey, but there are, and there is usually a difficulty in getting services. And I can imagine also, virtual programming as well.
Yeah, the digital divide in rural communities, the problem can often be much harder to solve because you actually don't have, the actual wiring running that you can tap into to make sure that you can get internet access within a property. So in those instances, what a majority of folks have used is using data-enabled devices. So tablets that have 4G LTE, if it's possible, and you have the actual, the strength of the signal to be able to enable that solution. But these are this is a really important topic that the VA and rural health agencies and other federal agency and partners and organizations are actively looking at. I think with the advent of 5G, I think we're kind of moving much faster in that direction to making equitable access to a reliable internet available. But in some areas, it's just there really aren't that solutions available.
So I would say specific to New Jersey, I wanted to reference it. I think this was back in December, but there was a bipartisan bill aimed at establishing a study committee on rural broadband access specific to New Jersey. I don't know where that sits right now, but that was just in December. So what I would say is they're looking for, organizations and advocacy groups and individuals to work on that commission. And that's something where Parker and others should, raise our hands and say, we'd like to be at that table to talk.
Yeah, that's a great.
I would just echo that. Like we're seeing in California, there's a huge need for advocacy right now to speak to the importance of building out the rural broadband. There's also, even in inner city areas, there's a lack of broadband last mile connectivity. So, and one of the things we're finding is there's not even good maps that show where the connectivity stops, right? It's just an area that hasn't gotten enough focus. And so it's going to take a lot of us really raising the roof on this and talking about why this is important. And I mean, I think the pandemic has created a door that we can all walk through, both from care and support of older adults, also giving school children access to education. And so it's a time where there's a lot of momentum, and advocacy has never been more important.
That's a really great point. Thank you. And then we do have a two-part question from Ebony P, particularly about the use of the Echo Dot. And she's wondering how residents have responded to using the Echo Dot in particular to combat social isolation, and if this is something that's available to residents of long-term care facilities.
So I can talk a little bit about Parker, and I'll take 2 quick minutes. So we have a small program in our assisted living community, but we also allow, at the residents' request, smart speakers in resident rooms. But there's a, we obviously have documentation, and we have to have consent and all those kinds of great things and privacy in place. But what I will say is we have some metrics, but we have anecdotal comments from our participants in the assisted living. And the one woman I always quote said she lived in a community of 70 people, but she was lonely. And the Alexa, or whatever she called her, became her best friend. And we had lots of conversations. It's so individualized. It's about what that person uses it for, whether it's games, whether it's for jokes, whether it's information, but it's a relationship that's built. And I will say, to Ryan's point, it's the best $25 you can spend in some instances.
And then I'll pile on and then let Ryan go for the big finish here, because he also has data. But so the voice first, Front Porch was one of the first in the country to adopt Alexa in 2016. And we did it with a pilot curious mind approach. And one of the big questions that we wanted to answer is, would this further isolate people? Right? Is this, that's always the fear about artificial intelligence. So does this become something that breaks connection or builds connection? And when we were done collecting data at the end of 6 months, 71% of the pilot study participants felt closer and more connected to family, friends, and neighbors and their community. Mm-hmm. And so we did focus groups to try to dig into this and say, what's going on, right? And what we found out was, it really fascinating to me. We actually had not taught the Alexa calling feature as part of the skills we were rolling out, but the pilot study participants figured it out on their own. And they started calling one another, and they were actually not really calling their families, they were calling each other. And they were saying, hey, I'm going down to dinner, let's go. Hey, someone's having bridge group over here, let's go. Hey, I got up this morning, I'm feeling great, how you feeling? And it became really clear that this was taking the friction out of getting connected to other people. Mm-hmm. And the data we've subsequently collected has further supported this. Like all things in technology related, it's all in how you deploy it and the approach you take. But from the work that we've done, and then what from AARP Foundation and under Ryan's leadership is done, even more powerful data has been collected. And repeatedly, it has proven that this is an incredibly important tool that takes the friction out of connection and gets people. It really does break down the walls of social isolation in important ways. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'll build on that and I guess top it off. I mean, for AARP Foundation, we, as a part of our work, did pre and post analysis measuring social isolation of residents, and then we saw increases in social interaction, increases of feelings of subjective social support, and statistically significant decreases in loneliness as a part of the work and deployment. But just to kind of bring it back to some of the qualitative aspects, the stories that we would hear overwhelmingly from residents, about how they were using Alexa or how they personified her or how it made them individually feel, really just kind of highlight that even though you might not be isolated in the fact that you're living in a community of individuals, or of many individuals, a property that could be 50 to 100 people in size, that every day when you go home to your unit, you're going home alone and you're living alone. And we know that through research, living alone has the same health impacts as social isolation in and of itself, and is very detrimental to an individual's well-being. And so people would talk about the first thing that they did when they woke up in the morning was to say hello to Alexa, and the last thing that they would say before going to bed was saying good night. And just having another voice in their apartment really provided them with an additional feeling of security and comfort that I don't think can be understated. And we also ran an exercise in which we asked people, Alexa makes me feel blank, and fill in the blank. And people would say empowered, or more like myself, or more connected to friends and family. And just the things that we heard were kind of astonishing, because for many people, it was the very first time that they were able to access the internet in a way that was easy to use for them. And that meant accessing music that they might not have had access to from their childhood because they've moved around, or other types of content that I think provides that nostalgia and really makes an individual feel connected to the world around them and themselves.
Yeah, I think sometimes in the mainstream media and in TV shows and things, these sort of devices, the AI and Alexa, can get a bad rap, and there are people who are concerned about the eavesdropping and listening that these organizations are doing, these corporations are doing. But you're so right to point out the connection and the benefit and the personification of Alexa, and that ability to ask it to play a song, ask it the weather. If you have family in another state, what's the weather there, or what time is it there, before you make a phone call. There's so many easy, quick things that you can ask of that device to do. And so the last question that we have sort of, again, spins right off of that. I know we've sang the praises just now here of the Echo Dot, but Deborah Nicholson asks, she's beginning the process of designing a program herself, and she wanted to know if there were any other user-friendly devices that you thought worked well for older adults. Anybody?
I'm gonna let Kari jump in, and then I'll.
We're also really doing a lot of work now with Google and the Google Voice First platform, both screen-based and the speakers. And I think if you're serving a diverse community where multiple languages are being spoken, there's a real reason to consider working with the Google devices, because far more language capabilities in those devices. If you ask me, and I ever have the chance to advocate, I'm advocating for a world where we can use anything we want, right? I don't want to have to use one or the other, because our job, I think, is to provide the choice that the people we serve want. And there's reasons for looking at a Google device as well as an Amazon device. So I think that's really important. I think another area that we're beginning to really deeply explore are low-cost tablets. Like the Google Chrome type tablets. If you can put your hands on something for $80 to $100 or even lower, that gives people the full access of the digital world. That's a super important tool that we all need to be cultivating and using and building data on. So that plus anything assistive, some of the technologies I talked about that allow people to participate in the digital world are also important and to contemplate. So those would be kind of my top three.
I'll add one in there. It's it's a different topic, but it's engagement. We've been using virtual reality for about the last 6 months, and have had some really wonderful success stories with that in group settings and individual settings. And I don't have to say a lot more other than it's transporting people to people, places, experiences that they wouldn't be able to go to otherwise, and some really strong connections to past memories. We've used it long-term care, assisted living, and in some hospice situations, and have just had some really brilliant outcomes with it. And I tip my hat to Kari, because we work with Front Porch in learning how to deploy technologies and engaging our staff and our residents, and that has really helped with the deployments we've done thus far.
Yeah, and I would just say, really think about, to answer the question, like, who are the people that you're serving and what are their needs, and kind of also what are some of the goals you're trying to achieve? Because I think Google offers a really great solution. We're also implementing that in our communities within Volunteers of America. Amazon Alexa has great products. Tablets are really helpful in order to be able to access the full breadth of internet capabilities and information and resources and services. Then there are, some other devices that are specifically designed for older adults, tablets, the GrandPad and IN2L and other companies that offer these types of solutions, which might be really great for someone who needs that additional support and aren't able to leverage other types of technology and devices to the fullest extent, whether that's due to cognitive decline or other limitations. And so it's really just kind of thinking about who you're serving and what do they specifically need to identify the right type of technology.
And the only other thing I would add to that is don't shy away from the infrastructure question. It's cool to be talking about devices, but really one of the most important things we all have to spend money on is building out that infrastructure and broadband access and getting an organization to understand that you need to commit to this. It's an ongoing cost. You need to plan for it. And as soon as you build it, then everybody will want more.
Yeah.
And that's the nature of the beast. And kind of to normalize that as part of the life of the organization, I think is critically important to being able to do all these other cool things.
And I'll also say, and I know we're at time, but to build off of that point from Kari, it's just, I think we're kind of past the point in the pandemic in which we were doing a lot of emergency triage, a deployment of technology or internet-enabled devices, and we really need to be thinking about what are the long-term investments we need to be making from an infrastructure or staffing or other these other areas in order to support the people we're serving in the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, and 50 years. So it really think strategically about, as you're making these investments, how's it going to support you in the long term, and be building for that future state.
Yeah, great, really great point to end on that. The thinking forward needs to be very strategic and with its eye on sustainability, right? Of how do we sustain these things now that we know people can utilize them and benefit from them. So thank you. We are, as you know, at time, and so we'll end the questions and answers there. But I think that we did get to just about all the questions, and you both provided really great information. So I'm thankful again to Ryan and to Kari for joining us, and to Judy and the whole team at Parker for helping us to put together this webinar, but also for their sponsorship of the webinar. Judy, I think we have one last slide, if you don't mind, since you're driving, to put we do have some resources, and again, we will share these slides. Ryan and Kari have agreed to that, and so we will get these out to all of you. But we're also working on putting together some additional webinars. We will likely have 2 more webinars on expanding further on this conversation about technology. And so look both at NJAAW's website and social media pages for information, as well as our newsletter. And if you're not signed up for our e-newsletter, that link is on our website, and you can find it there so that you get information about all the webinars that we'll be doing this year. We do have one coming up on March 9th about the PACE program, which, if you're not familiar with, you should definitely sign up for the webinar. But it's the program for all-inclusive care for the elderly, and it's a long-term care model that is not necessarily entirely facility-based. And so we're really excited to have presenters join us for that. So that's on March 9th, and registration for that will be open very soon. So we're excited to bring you those webinars, and happy that everyone has joined us today. We did one final question in the Q&A about contact info, and I'm not sure if it's in the slides or not, but Ryan and Kari, if you're okay with it, we can include that in the follow-up email with the slides of where they can find you and your organizations. How's that sound? Good stuff. Terrific. So thank you again, everybody, for joining us today, and for our presenters for their time. And we look forward to seeing you all again really soon. So enjoy the rest of your I'll say day, because as Kari pointed out, it's not afternoon yet where she is. So everyone enjoy the rest of your day, no matter what time it is where you are.
Not even lunchtime.
Terrific.
Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Bye. Thank you. That was fun.